So does bait colour matter at all? Should you be using dull baits, bright baits, yellow baits, pink baits? Who knows? The problem with this sport is that there are so many options to choose from. If you're used to fishing with different coloured baits and you're always swapping and chopping and changing, then you're probably going to have a pretty strong opinion on this. You're probably going to say, well, of course colour matters, and you know, I caught on a pink one and I didn't have a bite on the yellow, and therefore I've got to switch my rods to pink because that's what's working today. And if you believe that, and if that's what you do, then yeah, it's probably going to work for you. But I spent most of the last 15 years pretty much only fishing with a dull bottom bait. Does it work for me? Of course it works for me. I don't worry about what colour bait I'm using because I'm just using that bait. If I'm fishing 3 different spots and I've got 3 dull bottom baits on those spots, so many times I might only be getting pickups on the one rod. What does that tell me? Well, it tells me, because all my baits are the same, it tells me that that spot is working. Great. Reset, repeat. If you have different colour baits on different rods and one spot starts to produce, then it's really easy to be sucked into this notion that, well, it's the colour. For me it's not, and because I'm not thinking about bait colour, it's not confusing my angling. I can just focus on what I should be doing, which is doing my prep, putting myself on the fish and sitting on my hands waiting for one of those rods to bust off, because I know it's going to happen. Sometimes I do incorporate some colour into my fishing, not really because I think it's going to make a difference. I mean, I've got 2 pink pop-ups on today. Why pink? To be honest, I could have chosen any colour. I'd quite happily use dull pop-ups, white pop-ups, whatever colour. It's not something that I worry about nowadays. I haven't worried about it for years. Going back 20 years ago when I was getting back into the sport, yeah, I bought into it too. The bait colour was important, and you go down the tackle shop and, well, you want to buy that flavour bait, and you've got to buy, you know, if you want all that flavour and then you want all the different colours, you can end up spending 40-50 quid on 4 or 5 pots of pop-ups, and you know, what have you got? Well, you've got a load of multicoloured baits. Did it catch me any more fish? Not really. There are many things that matter far more in this game than bait colour. So once you understand that and focus on that, and you understand that all you need to be successful is a dull coloured bottom bait on the spot 99.9% of the time, then it really does simplify your fishing. I think the carp fishing world is filled with hearsay, and there are so many people, so many anglers out there with so many different opinions. Everyone experiences the sport differently in their own way. All I can tell you is, well, colour doesn't matter to me. It's not a factor in my angling. I think a lot of it depends on the sort of waters that you're used to fishing. If you're fishing a gin clear water where the carp are feeding by sight, then might colour matter? Don't know. I haven't spent enough time on those kind of waters. I have fished them, but to be honest, you know, I was trying too many things and never really nailed it down. Most of the fishing that I do is in coloured water, water with a touch of green. The visibility is not great. It's not awful, but it's not great. I trust that the carp can find my bait just through scent alone because the bait is good enough. I know it's good enough. I've got absolute confidence in the bait I use, and when I'm using a bait, for a season, then I use that bait. I don't need to take different flavour baits with me and have different baits on different rods. That is not how I fish. I haven't done that for 20 years. I think the sooner that you can switch to this mentality that you're on a bait for think of it like a campaign really. You're using that bait for the season and it's going to work. If you're using a good quality bait from whatever manufacturer and you're not catching, then it's not because of the bait. It's not because of the colour, it's not because of the flavour. All good quality base mixes should work. Carp don't wake up one morning and decide, oh, you know what, I've had enough of them fish meals, I think I'll try a nut bait. You know, that's not how carp work. So by sticking to one bait from one supplier and a bait of one single colour as well, if you're going to have some pop-ups into your mix just to cover the sort of fishing that you're doing, great. Pick a colour, any colour. I quite like pink, just because it works. I could have chosen white, I could have chosen anything. I don't need one of each colour. By consciously limiting my bait choice and my colour choice, I just eliminate factors. I'm not choosing what flavour to use, I'm not choosing what colour to use. That's two less decisions that I haven't got to make. And the more decisions you have to make, the more confused you're going to be. All I worry about is weather, timing, location, and getting out there, getting some bait into them and getting something going. That's all I do. And if I get it right, if I'm in the right place at the right time, and my rig's good enough and my hooks are razor sharp, then I know my bait's going to work, because it does. So my advice is always the same. Keep it simple, limit your options, focus on what really matters, and eliminate as many extra choices as possible from your fishing. Keep it simple, keep it focused, it works. If you're fairly new to the sport, then I get it. I understand that you want to experiment, you want to have fun, and that's a great part of the sport. That gets you started. For me, it wasn't until I started limiting my choices and being more committed in my approach and just using one bait, one rig, that I really started to build confidence. It worked then on that spot at that time. It might work again on that spot over there. The spot that produced a bite might be, you know, alive and productive for 3 hours, could be going for 3 days. All you've got to do is, you know, keep that one going, do the same, reset, repeat, and I move the other rods around until I get something going. I do not change colour or rig or bait. I just move the traps about. I call it spot lottery. Bit of a misnomer, because I really don't believe there's any luck in carp fishing whatsoever. I move traps around until something happens, until the stars align and it kicks off.